Hey guys, my name is Kayla Brock, and today my informative speech will be over the manatees. So I'm just going to reiterate why I chose the manatees, just in case you didn't get it from my last speech. They're my favorite animal. I did a project in first grade over them, and ever since then I fell in love. I had to do this whole research project. I came up with a bunch of facts about them and presented it to the class for the first time, and I did a really good job, and I was really proud of it. And ever since then, they've been my favorite animal. Manatees have here recently been downlisted from endangered to threatened. This is due to their population increasing and just we're becoming more aware of them and implementing more conservation for them, and has increased their population. So that has helped us, and that's another reason why I chose this topic. There's not a lot of knowledge about them in today's society, so I just thought that this would be a good eye-opener for some of us. Most of you may not know anything about manatees, so this may be a good learning experience. So a little bit about the manatee. Manatees are herbivores. They mostly diet on seagrass, weeds, and algae, mostly seagrass. They're known for being sea cows, so they do graze most of their day, and they can eat up to 1/10 of their total body mass in 24 hours. And these creatures are not small, so that is a lot of food. Their average lifespan in the wild is 40 years, which is a long time. This is just an average. There is definitely manatees that do not live up to that amount of years because of the threats that we will discuss here in a minute. Their average weight varies from 440 pounds to 1,300 pounds. So their ancestors was also the elephant. So that is why I guess they're so big. But yeah. They're slow animals, usually gliding through the water around 5 miles an hour, but they can swim up to 15 miles an hour if they're faced with any threats or anything like that. They can go faster, which is quite a significant feat for animals this size. They are mammals, and they do have to have air to breathe. They don't have gills, so they can be submerged underwater for 15 minutes if they're just stationary and just kind of relaxing. But when they're swimming and being active, they had to go up to get a breath every 3 to 4 minutes. They are mammals, and they do give live birth to calves, which is the picture that you see up there. Their gestation period is around 11 to 12 months, so almost a year long, or a year long, which is crazy to think about because that's awful. There's 3 different types of manatees. There's the West Indian, the Amazonian, and the African. The West Indian manatee is what we are native to. West Indian is found in Florida, and that's what we're accustomed to. And that is what you see in that bottom picture right there. That is the West Indian, found in Florida. So, how they became endangered. In 1970s, they became endangered or almost extinct. Their population was down in the hundreds, so that's how the main reason as to why they became endangered, or why they got the name endangered species or became an endangered species. So the threats that they face is a main one is the growth of boat traffic. So boat traffic, the propellers on them, they can significantly injure them. They can cause pretty much death. As you can see in this picture, you can see the prop marks on them. I mean, some of them aren't as severe and they can live through it, but it is a huge problem for the manatees. They're big animals and they're shallow creatures. So when boats do come and they don't obey the speed zones or anything like that, they can get cut up by the propeller and cause life-threatening injuries. Another one is fishing nets. All sea creatures have this problem. Not all sea creatures, but a lot of them. And as you can see in this picture right here, a baby manatee was taken with a fishing net. Another one is water pollution. Of course, all sea creatures are going to face water pollution, and as that continues to grow, then their population will decline, of course. Another one is habitat loss. Habitat loss is due to the environment, and the main reason for they're shallow creatures, so when we start building it in our environment, building the infrastructure and stuff, that ruins their habitat. So of course that is going to be a huge deal because that is their food. So that's another reason. Red tide, you may not know about this. We learned it, or you will learn it in microbiology. Sorry about that. The red tide is bacteria. They're called dinoflagellates, and when they bloom, they create a toxin. So this toxin can get into your lungs and suffocate you. It can paralyze your alveolar sacs to where you can't breathe. So with the manatees, they can ingest it, get into their lungs. They can breathe it, and it'll get into their lungs. So just this is a huge problem, and it's hard to kind of control it because just bacteria just grows everywhere. We all know that. So conservation that has been implemented. In Florida, we have certain power plants that have helped with these warm-blooded animals getting warm in the wintertime, which is a huge problem because when they get too cold, then they get hypothermic and then, they die. So as you can see there, that's in Florida. That is a power plant, and a bunch of them congregate there in the winter. So that has helped tremendously with the conservation of them. Another one is speed zones. So boaters have to slow down, and as you can see in that top corner, it tells you that there is manatees there. You need to slow down. You need to make sure that you're watching. So that's a huge one because the propellers, again, as long as you're watching for them, they're kind of, you'll know they're there. Public knowledge, of course. Public knowledge is going to be key in order to save them. You got to know that they're there. You got to know where they like to live and all that type of stuff. Manatee signs, which is that bottom one, is that yellow one. That's another one that they've put up besides the manatee zones. And also, I found a manatee app. It's called I Spy a Manatee. Pretty cute. But they tell you where a sighting has been. You can also put out an alert, and the wildlife conservation will come out if there is an injured manatee or anything like that. So it's just kind of a awareness, which is really nice to have. So reasons why they have been downlisted. They have been downlisted from endangered to threatened because their population was increasing. So when they did a consensus, they measured all the manatees in that area, and then they decided that it was sufficient enough, so they downlisted them, saying that their conservations had been implemented and their populations were increasing. So a reason that some people do not agree with this is because the same threats that were prevalent in 1970s are still prevalent today. And this could easily still happen if conservation isn't taken seriously and the boats and people aren't watching out for them or anything like that, then yes, of course, this can easily happen. So when they take a synoptic survey, which is basically a consensus, when they did this, they just did it in a tiny little portion of Florida in the Pacific Bay where manatees like to congregate. And this didn't really provide a statistical estimate of their actual population in the entire world, which they need to do. They need to make sure that when they make a consensus and they look at the population, that this is congruent with everything. They don't need to just look at that one little population and just say, hey, they're okay and we can downlist them. So I think that more conservation should be put in place, and this would help the population tremendously. So those are my citations, and thank you so much for listening